trains, you either get in at something like 8 o'clock or 9:15.
That's on the fly.
There's nothing in between. If you get there for 8, you're getting the 7 o'clock train. You know, it's just way earlier than, yeah, I mean, if you're a teacher and you're in school early, that's fine.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Good evening and welcome to the Frome Town Council meeting. Well done for braving the cold. It's got proper parky out there, so thanks for coming along. This is the meeting of Frome Town Council. I'm Sarah Butler and I am chairing this evening's meeting. We have people here in the room as well as online. For those that are here in the room, a few housekeeping notes. The emergency exit is in the corner of the room. The assembly point is on the far side of the car park. Toilets are at the end of the corridor on the right, and there's an accessible toilet to the right of the lift. Tea, coffee and water over in the corner. Tonight, Paul is clerking, Laura, Sarah and Rachel will manage the questions, the participant settings and generally the IT. And as far as I can tell, my microphone is working, but do tell me if you can't hear. I struggled with this a little bit last time. The meeting is being recorded and we are live streaming onto our YouTube channel. Councillors attending on Zoom, which I think is only one of us this evening, please use the yellow hand, and everyone else, please ask questions through the Q&A board. First on the agenda is apologies for absence. I believe that's just Polly, and Anne Hills is on Zoom. Is that right? Is that up to date?
That's correct.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, do we have any declarations of councillors' interests on any of the subjects on the...
So we just approve the apologies.
Approve the apologies. Thank you, Fiona. Seconded by Andy. Everyone okay with that?
Unanimous.
And then any councillors' interests? Lisa?
I'm a director of adventure.
Any other declarations of interest on the agenda? Okay. And then we need to approve the minutes from the last meeting on the 16th of November. If I can have a proposer for those, please.
Do this first. No,
Anita, seconded by Philip. Yay or nay? Thank you.
Unanimous.
Paul?
Yeah, so on the minutes from last time, I was asked to write to Stuart Brown about the Mayday Saxon Vale application and project. I received a reply from him this morning saying that he believed all the questions that he wrote, or that Barry O'Leary, who's one of the cabinet members, wrote to Jane Llewellyn, our staff, that had been forwarded to councillors about a month ago, answered all the questions. So I just thought I'd share that with you.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, so our first item on this evening's agenda, rather our second, is a presentation from Doug Stewart, the CEO of Adventure. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Great. Carla's just going to hand you a microphone.
There? Oh, we're quite close. Okay. So thank you very much for sparing some time. I am planning on a bit of a sprint through Adventure. I'm the new CEO, and as I've been going around doing my community building, I've realized how many people had heard of Adventure, possibly don't really know what we do. So I just thought I'd take this opportunity just to give you a bit of an overview, and everybody is absolutely welcome to come and visit us at any point and to find me for more questions. Does this work? Oh yeah, okay. So just to introduce myself, I've been with Adventure for nearly 3 years now, facilitating the startup course. I've had 5 years as a consultant, mainly working in kind of community engagement. And I was, before that, 5 years head of outdoor enterprises with the National Trust. So my sort of nearly 20 years now experience in connecting people and place and developing initiatives that help people thrive. And I am very excited to now be CEO of Adventure. I was actually a bit of a fanboy from a distance. And it appears even from outside of Frome, I knew more about Adventure than many people within Frome. Next slide, please. So I thought I'd start off with this idea of safety through agency. And what do communities need to feel safe? There's been quite a lot of work recently that shows that a large portion of the society don't feel safe at the moment. And the question is, how do we change that? And I believe that agency plays a big part of that. Can you imagine if we had a citizens' confidence index rather than a consumer confidence index? So rather than measuring the success of a town by how much people were prepared to buy, it was how enabled they felt to solve their own problems, to actually feel confident in the future that they could create for themselves. And at Adventure, we aim to grow feelings of safety by giving people confidence and agency. I think of us as a convener agency, that we provide training, networking, support, and space for individuals to grow, organizations to cooperate, and grassroots innovation to be nurtured. And what we actually do is really open to whatever the community needs or people come to us with. We don't have one thing that we do, it's more of a process. We act as a facilitator to many different projects. And if the council were, if their role is to support the environment of change, we would like to have the role as the doer, the people that actually action these things. And next slide, please. I'd start by a little roundup of our incredible 10 years. I am joining after 10 years of Johannes leading in a fantastic way and really have that feeling of standing on the shoulder of giants. But we have some incredible statistics that we can share. That over the last 10 years, over 60,000 people have passed through our doors, attended our courses, or worked in our hub. We've spent about 1.2 million and generated about 8.3 million in measurable value to the community. So that's measurable value, not all the intangible value. And when I think of Frome, I know that a lot of the fairy dust that Adventure sprinkled is what people talk about when they talk about Frome. They talk about the independent council, they talk about the independent market, and they talk about the share shop, and they talk about Frome Fridge and all these extra little bits. So I really feel that there's a huge amount of intangible value that doesn't even appear on that. But it does come to this wonderful figure that for every pound we spend or that is invested in us, we generate roughly £6.83 on value for the community, which is incredible. Now, I have to say that a lot of that is due to how well Johannes managed the organization. It's incredibly lean at the moment, and the costs are incredibly low. I think obviously that's changing at the moment, so that equation might not be valid into the future, but still it's an incredible rate of return on investment to the community. And through our organization and interventions that we've established, we save about 200 tons of greenhouse gas emissions and avoided about 120 tons of raw material use every year, which we feel goes a long way to helping Frome meet its zero targets. And we're very proud of that. Next slide, please. Impact on people. The first thing we're about people, place and planet, if I was to sum it up, and impact on people is one of our primary concerns. And as I started with, one of the main things we measure is confidence. And we have another wonderful figure that about 95% of people who participate in our courses, whether that's the short courses or the startup courses or Make Shed, leave with more confidence. And confidence has more value to the community than getting somebody a job. If you find somebody a job, they may keep that job, they may not. That might be their job for a long time. If you give somebody confidence, they'll go out for a drink, they'll meet friends, they'll get a better job, they'll improve their life, they'll have aspirations. So just we do find people jobs, but this thing of confidence we feel is really important, especially at the moment. And there are, I won't read those, but we have lots of wonderful testimonials from lots of people that come through that do say wonderful things about how Adventure has changed their life. And just today I was actually in Taunton because we've now got a small enterprise working in Taunton. And one of the young men who was on our course actually said to the facilitator that they've saved his life. That in the work that she's done with them, he was had been basically a lock-in for a year before lockdown, was very insular, had signed off sick with chronic fatigue. He had then almost embraced lockdown as a wonderful chance, wonderful excuse not to leave the home. He's now done our startup course and is looking for work and feels invigorated. He couldn't make eye contact before the course and he was project leader by the end of the course. So this really does change life. It's not just about environmental impact and having these kind of very PR friendly enterprises that we may have a reputation for. This is about real human change. Next slide, please. And we have an impact on place. And I'll just run through some of the interventions that we've had. We classify them in different ways depending on which funders are interested at a different time. And at the moment, this was the most appropriate way to classify them. But we have a sharing town, where obviously Share Shop is one of our most known intervention, and it was the first share shop in the UK. The Welsh Mill Hub, still going after 6-7 years. It's a thriving workplace. We have fixed desks there where people run their businesses, as well as about 40 to 60 people who come and hot desk with us. And it's a lovely community. We have lunch every Thursday, and you're all welcome to pop down and join us for lunch. The Wardrobe Collective at the bottom there, that was a clothes swapping initiative, very connected to the ideas of the circular economy. It slowed down a little bit for the last couple of years, but there is a team of 4 at the moment who are reinvigorating it, and that will be back next year. Circular economy is a big thing for us. We didn't call it a circular economy for a long time because we felt that was quite difficult for a lot of people to understand. We talk about resilience and what made a resilient place. But as far as our circular impacts, sorry, can you hear me without? Am I doing okay?
Fine.
Right. Okay. So a community fridge, and as you know, the community fridge is was the first in the UK as well, the first community fridge, and it just amazes me how much food ends up in there, how much would have just gone to landfill, and now has the opportunity for people to come. One of the things that I love most about it is that it allows anybody to go there. You don't have to be on vouchers. You don't have to be in a position of particular need. And it's about saving waste, not just about food poverty, but it does provide access to food for hundreds of people who are able to go there. I mean, particularly bread, but there are lots of other things. I remember doing a big haul of ginger one time. That was a gold rush on ginger one day that I was quite happy to help myself to. And we have Loop Frome on that list now. That's a fairly new one. And Loop is really about a circular economy. We've got obviously Ben in the room with us today, one of the directors of Loop. But Loop started off, Peter McFadden came to me with the Frome Compost Club, which was a bunch of old geezers who loved their compost. And we gave it the adventure treatment. And with the inspiration of the students, it became about the nutrients of Frome and how could we cycle nutrients within Frome. And so their ambition are for far more than just collecting food waste from restaurants. And they're looking at what other ways that they can help Frome become carbon neutral. But they are already breaking even with their collecting from restaurants, turning it into the most luscious compost you have ever seen. It is just full of life, mycelium and nematodes and everything, and is now being sold. So it's a lovely example of a simple product coming in, getting the adventure treatment and coming out being quite an inspirational product that is also being seen around the world as something quite impressive. These guys going around on electric vehicles, collecting waste, turning it into compost, giving that to community projects. It's inspiring to me still. And green and healthy, obviously that's a big impetus for us now. But one of my favorite stories from there is actually the wall garden at Mells, which is obviously a great success going on now. And Project Grow, where we worked in partnership with Shared Earth Learning to provide a polytunnel, which is now being used by NEET, so those not in education training, employment education or training, to connect to the possibility of working in horticulture. And it's a lovely example of an adventure partnership, really supporting Shared Earth Learning on that one. Next slide, please. Sorry for the complicated design, but it's complicated what we do at Adventure. We do a lot. And we aim basically to have a nose to tail offer for the whole community. So a lot of people know us as a training young people, and absolutely that is what we specialize in. We want to make sure that there's space for young people to feel prioritized and to connect to their one true precious life and to really thrive. But we also have a community-wide offer that we're really proud of. And right at the bottom with young adults, we now do advocacy. So we work with 16 to 18-year-olds, people who I think of as trapped on the sofa, who for whatever reason have kind of fallen out of education, and we go to where they are. We meet them where they are, and we have wonderful offers that we can connect them to, and we treat them in a very human way, and we try to connect them to adventure and what we have to offer. Once we've got them off the couch and given them a bit of sparkle back in their life, we can then connect them to Make Shed, which is a hands-on creative experience that gives them some social outlet, allows them to work alongside people, but we're also progressing them towards an entrepreneurial model. So the things that they make in Make Shed, we then sell in markets. And we had a lovely example by one of our Make Shed attendees recently, who had made some badges. She took them to the local market and she made £35 from them. And we said, well, should we reinvest that into the company? And she said, no, I need to eat this week. So she was able to then take that money and use that to eat. And that for me is amazing, that we've actually given her that connection to putting the work in, being creative, selling something and improving her life. She normally gets £50 a week. She's got an extra 35. It just transformed her life and was a real tangible experience of us giving that, you know, somebody who had come to us as a very troubled person, had found some joy, had done some creativity, and had then gone and actually made some money. Then we have the short course offer. We have Startup. I hope you've heard of the Startup program that we do. Startup is a 10-week program where 18 to 35-year-old-ish, because we're quite flexible on that age range, come together to 10 weeks to learn how to do a thing. And this was really what Adventure was founded around. This idea that a lot of young people have passion, they have excited, they are awake, they do want to do something, but they have no agency. They don't know how to actually do a thing. And so we give them, we have a great structured program that takes them from understanding their power, their potential, how to work as a group, how to resolve conflict, how to vote in democratic ways, and then how to do research, how to develop an idea, and then how to plan it and actually deliver it. And everybody that leaves that course feels the benefit and feels that they've increased their confidence and their power in the world, their ability to do something, which is hugely empowering. Last year we did Kickstart. Lovely Dawn is in the room here, who led our Kickstart program, and we are so proud about that. We connected to over 40 businesses. We led the Kickstart program in Frome, and we would love to do something like that again. That for us, that role in between young people, placements, apprenticeships is something that we think we could do a lot more on. And we've just relaunched our business breakfasts. So we're really trying to build on those connections we made in Kickstart with the business world in Frome and make it much more of a circular, so we can really understand the needs of Frome businesses. We can get much better connections, because as much as we love the creative and we see the Frome Independent and the makers side of Frome as hugely valuable, the real growth and the strength of Frome will come from industry, because it's scalable. That if we can get the tech industries and things to really find young people in the town that they can take on in starter positions, it's what we feel will really benefit Frome the most. And then in the middle, the kind of overlap between all our initiatives at the moment is the Green and Healthy Futures project, which is a partnership with Frome Town Council and the medical practice. It's an innovative project funded by the National Lottery to really look at how we can solve climate issues and health issues at the same time. We just got fingers crossed. We'll find out in January if we've won that, but that will be the biggest project Adventure have ever done, and very exciting. And within that, we've learned a lot about outreach. One of the things that Adventure was often criticized for was maybe not listening enough, not being actually responsive to community. But with FutureShed, we have this wonderful network now of consultation and listening and really hearing ideas from the community. And yeah, as we go up there, we hope that we can build on the initiatives through Green and Healthy, and we're very excited for that one. So next slide. So the reason I'm here is we're in transition. Johannes led for 10 years. He did an amazing job. I'm in awe of that man. I stand on the shoulder of a giant, but I do feel that in some ways Adventure was still in its startup stage. It was still a very lean organization, and still we struggle. We are still very tight financially. Our building our hub is very precarious. We have a very poorly insulated building. It doesn't function very well, and our tenure isn't guaranteed. So although we've had 10 years, we are still quite a vulnerable organization. But yeah, I'm new leadership. We've just started working in Taunton. We've done a year in Taunton now, which has been really successful, and we're really excited to be going beyond our borders. We're exploring new options for commercial resilience. I would like Adventure to be at least 50% funded by our own enterprises. I think if you're a CIC, that's part of the reason to be a CIC, is to have strong commercial side as well as your charitable side. We have already got an increased connection to business through the Kickstart process and our business breakfast, but we'd like to increase that. And one of my passions is connecting to the Fixie project and Donate IT. We've already done some work around that, but really looking at how Adventure can play a role in e-waste, but also in eco-tech and the kind of growing a passion around, environmental technology that I feel is going to be a growing industry and be a really great one for young people that come through to have more skills and understanding in that. Next slide, please. Has that gone backwards or is that? There we go. Only slight difference is that for me, I would like there to be a little more effort on our part around innovation and incubation. That a lot of the initiatives that we do, they have this 11 weeks and they're fantastic, but what we launch into the world is often a proof of concept. And then it's kind of struggles to live and breathe on its own, and the town council sometimes needs to support it in some ways. And we love partnership, but we would love to find a financial model that enabled us to do much more incubation of small businesses, small enterprises, as well as our own initiatives, and really have a home that offers the skills and resources to help the local community, the local enterprises thrive. Next slide, please. And yeah, what next? So next year is a really big year for us. That the Green and Healthy Future project could be so a £1.1 million bid, 1.8 million bid to the lottery, and has already been transformative in a lot of the connections it's made, the initiatives that it's launched, the Frome Food Network, hugely exciting. The Everyone Needs Pockets program around fabric reuse, and it's really done some great work in building this team of very, very different skills from medical practice, Frome Town Council and Adventure, as well as lots of inspirational community members in really trying to make some tangible difference. And it's unique in the country. There is no other project that is combining this kind of health and green change in the same way. Next slide, please. And I think I'm near the end now. But yeah, I did mention our startup course. So this is the 11-week course, and just some of the figures there that it kind of gone off the edge there. It costs us about £50,000 to run it in one location for 1 year, but we return about £424,000 in value to the community when we do that. So just as a part of the pitch when I go to other towns, that this is obviously quite exciting to them to see how for a relatively small input, there's a large output that is in lots of different areas. And yeah, and we divide that up. There's £48,000 for the local community through the actual teams helping to launch the thing, but then the further local economy procurement. Sorry, I'll skip on from that one. Yeah, I can't see the edge of my slide, so I can't actually read what those figures are related to. But there we go. You see, we make impact. We're value for money is the point I'm trying to make with that one. And next slide. Yeah. So what next? The BHAG, just what we call a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. So we like to dream big, and we would love to see a hub for the circular economy. We would love to see an amalgamation of all the resources. So a lot of them Adventure have already established, but the idea that share is in one location and the fridge is in another, and you have to be quite a motivated individual to make use of the circular economy at the moment. Wouldn't it be fantastic if there was one stop where you had programming around reuse and remaking and repair, and you had a used paint and used wood and used fabrics and clothes swapping, and all these things happen in the same place. And I can imagine on a Saturday, a family going down there, the kids go and learn how to do a craft activity, the dad goes to learn how to darn socks, the mum is getting a piece of wood cut to shape for mending the kitchen. And it's a kind of a family outing that rather than going to a shopping mall, we all go to the reuse centre and we help our problems there. It's a social environment, it's fun, there's great food made from surplus from local producers, and that's our dream. I could see Adventure role there as kind of a coordinator and a facilitator. So not needing to own anything, not needing to run any of the industry. We'd incubate the different innovations, but almost as a concierge for the circular economy, helping to guide people's flow through it and supporting that innovation and agency. And is there one more slide? Yeah, and so the January startup is thinking about, well, what is the minimal viable product for a community, for a hub like that? And we think a community supermarket is an exciting idea. And the minimal viable product for that, well, what does that look like? We are asking the startup students in January to look at what does a circular economy style market supermarket mean? Is it in the community? Is it a double-decker bus that goes to people? Is it something in town that people can use? We're partnering with the Green and Healthy Futures project on that. We've got the local neighborhood networks we'd like to get involved. We will be working with the Frome Food Network, Share, the Community Fridge, Wardrobe Collective, really trying to pull in all of our friends to see in this time of crisis and crunch and all the nice words we might try and put around a really terrible situation that we're going to find ourselves in the next year. What can we do to add most value to the community? How can we still stand by our principles of a circular economy and resilience and community? And actually meet a community need, but in a very Frome way. So it probably won't be a community supermarket as we might buy off the shelf from another community. It will be something that's been developed in cooperation and collaboration with our local communities. Last slide, just to say, thank you for having me. And there are my contact details. And anybody who's interested, I'm always open for any questions. Am I under 10 minutes?
No, you were 20 minutes actually, but that's okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doug. That was very useful insight into your work and what's going on. We do have a couple of spare minutes for questions if anybody does have any questions. I will go Drew, Adam, then Mel.
I just want to thank you, Doug, because I mean, without a shadow of doubt, adventure is one of the great jewels in the crown of our beautiful town. I've just got one thing that, you know, I think that sometimes someone said to me once that Frome actually isn't the finished product. Well, nowhere is really, but I just, you know, I have been a little bit concerned to see the Loop get pretty run down with vandalism, with the vermin problem. And one of the objectives you speak of in your presentation there is to try and bring things together. And it's great that we still have the community fridge doing valuable work, but it's kind of drifted apart a little bit. And I'm just curious as to know as what we can do as local authorities at different tiers of town, district and county. What can we help you to do to restore that really valuable facility in the heart of our town? Thank you.
Can I pass that to
Nikki
somebody in the room, please?
Nikki.
Nikki.
Drew. So we've been speaking to Mendip about Frome Town Council taking on the lease of Loop to Loop, just because, yeah, actually asking them to do any maintenance has taken quite a while to get even basic things done. We'd like to have control of that ourselves and be able to get the fridge back in as soon as possible. It's looking like they'll be able to use the space over Christmas because Terry's, obviously, it's the month where you get, I think, 3 or 4 times more donations than any other time of the year. They save, yeah, almost half of their waste over Christmas. So they'll be able to use the space over that time, but we're kind of negotiating the lease at the moment in the hope that we can get that sorted and do the maintenance ourselves and get it back up and running. And we'd love to work with Adventure very closely on sort of how we use that space, because obviously we've got the fridge there, we've got the cafe space, but there's other units in there that I think are underutilized at the moment and potential for
We have spoken about this, Nikki, haven't we? We're both really excited. We're just battling still to get the lease signed over. As soon as Mendip give it back.
Been a process, but we're getting there.
Can I just make an offer on behalf of Adam and myself?
Yeah, absolutely.
That, you know, the lease is getting held up. I know that Adam and I will pursue it with vigor to try and help move it along. So if there's anything that we can do, please just ask us.
Thanks very much. I mean, it's taken time, but we are getting there now, and the officers have been incredibly helpful. So thank you.
That wasn't said into the microphone. So can I just say that what Drew was saying was that he would offer any support and help to Nikki and the team here with that. Only that people online wouldn't have heard that. So yeah. Okay. Does that answer the question? Thank you. Adam.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, it's just to say what you do is very holistic, isn't it? It's quite wide ranging. And I do wonder, does it need pitching to Somerset County Council or Mendip District Council with a future unitary in mind to take this wider, maybe look for funding sources as well to expand and to maybe make what you do more secure and more appreciated? I don't know, have you pitched various bits and pieces that you do or the whole thing to Somerset County Council at the moment? There's so much that you could get involved with potentially, I don't know.
Do you have a comment on that? Were you?
Is that
Yeah,
okay?
go ahead.
So, I mean, I would say a part of our pitch, if you like, for a town deal is absolutely to do things around incubation and early help and all of that kind of stuff. So it'll be well worth us talking about that as we kind of move forward in those conversations with Somerset as to where you might fit into that.
Fantastic. So I'm 3 months in. So you are my first stop. Obviously, it's taken a little while to get to this meeting. I would love to speak to Somerset. We're hand to mouth, and anything that we could do, it feels that we should be on a 3-year cycle at least, just for employment contracts, just for the stability of our staff. It feels that they are so generous with their time. We've got such a wonderful crew of people who work with us, and I can only offer them as much job security as the kind of 6 to 12 monthly contracts that I'm awarded for delivering specific pieces of work are. And that doesn't feel like a livelihood with meaning, which is part of our core message that we give to young people. So if we're not able to deliver that for our own staff, how can we really say that that's what we deliver to young people or to the wider community? And yeah, one of my ambitions, as well as seeking a more consistent commercial side of adventure so we can fund ourselves, is to really secure some proper funding so that we can actually make 3-year plans, have a proper ambition, rather than constantly, I mean, I spend most of my time is trying to get the ninja skills of fundraising that Jan has had. That he really, the reason that Adventure has been such a success is he was able to pivot and pitch and get these bids in on time and with precision. And it just takes so much of my time. It limits all the other things I could be doing. So if there is any way that we can talk to wider audiences, that would be really valuable to us.
I can at least send in the video of this meeting when it's done. And then we'll go from there. Thank you.
And one more question, Mel.
Yeah, this is a continuation of some of the questions. When I was chair of Adventure about 6 months ago, I think the greatest danger to Adventure was the loss of accommodation, because well, it's be there forever, and it's not really satisfactory anyway. For those of you who've not been on the council law, the council made an offer to buy the building where B&Q is now, but were outbid by somebody else, but not very much, but we lost that one. And we tried for years to get Mendip to reach some kind of deal with the warehouse in Saxonville. I can't remember exactly. Western Warehouse, yeah. We didn't get anywhere with that. Usual Mendip problems. Not being able to make a decision and not being able to recognise the needs of the community. Are you any further advanced in finding any accommodation at all? Can the Welsh Mill be made more secure in terms of your
Well, we're obviously spoiled for choice for commercial building in Frome at the moment. No, we are still very vulnerable. And we've just had a rent increase. Our electricity bills have gone up, but the landlady still won't provide proper insulation or double glazed windows. So we've sought legal advice, and we probably have 8 to 12 months notice from any point that we are given notice. But it would probably mean a change of our structure and our offer, because just the scale of the buildings that we have, we would probably need to pivot into a different format to fit in an available accommodation. We wouldn't be able to offer all the services that we offer now, because, well, we have been trying for 3 years to secure that building or to find a new home. And we had an offer recently, but the proposed rent was 5 times what we currently pay. So it just wasn't an option for us at the moment.
Thank you very much, Doug. Thank you. Okay, thanks again for that. We'll move swiftly on to item number 3 on the agenda, which is questions and comments from the public and councillors. I'm aware of 2 questions from Philip and from Dawn. So we'll go to Phil first.
Thank you, Sarah. I just want to talk buses for a minute, if I may. I've just prepared something here that I'll read out very quickly. I've been doing quite a lot of work with Peter Travis from Somerset Bus Partnership, FavBug, and with Rachel also and her team. The D2 and the Frome 30 bus services are currently being funded with the help of central government, what's known as the COVID recovery grant. The COVID recovery grant was extended in October, but only until March 2023, when it's currently scheduled to end. Somerset Unitary Council's 23-24 budget is under a lot of pressure, as we know, because they need to fund statutory service obligations where costs are suffering from inflationary increases. Passenger numbers on our buses continue to recover. That's the positive side, but they're still below pre-COVID rates. Meanwhile, operating costs, fuel and wages are increasing rapidly. First Bus will soon be reviewing their services, and the likelihood is that many services will be scheduled for cuts in the spring without the support from the government or from Somerset. We need to do what we can. What I'm proposing this evening is that we as a council should write to the Transport Minister, Mark Harper MP, Secretary of State for Transport, and the Buses Minister, Richard Holden MP, Parliamentary Under Secretary of State, Roads and Local Transport, and to Somerset to get the recovery grant extended at least to October 2023. Thank you.
I suspect that's something for Peter to answer. Sorry, dropping you in it.
We can we'll write. We'll draft a letter and get it off as soon as we possibly can.
Thank you, Paul.
I guess, Phil, you've got a kind of letter in mind. If you could pass on to Peter what you think we ought to say, that would be grand.
Yes, I've already spoken to Peter and Rachel, and yes, we will do that. We can do that.
Great. Thank you very much. Dawn.
Sorry, hang on. So you would like to write the same letter to those three organisations, and councillors happy for me to send that on to them as we've done in the past. Is that okay? Just a sort of nods will be good enough for me. Great.
Anyone not okay with that? Okay.
Thanks. We'll do that.
Dawn.
Thank you. Yeah, just wanted to give you a couple of updates from the Somerset Council because there's some really good things going on. One of the most recent is the 100% council tax reduction for people who are earning under £95 per week, or a couple with 2 children on a weekly income of below 260. There also are certain criteria for people who are earning under 500 a week as well with families. So that's 100% council tax reduction, which is great news. And care leavers up to the age of 25 will now be exempt from council tax as well. Of course, there's also benefits on council tax for people who have disabilities and war pensioners and families who already receive maintenance for caring. And then the other one I wanted to bring up really was just an appeal for private landlords to come forward with vacant or soon to be vacant properties for rent, because we're wanting to move a lot of the people who have come over from the Ukraine from sponsored accommodation into private accommodation. So if there's anybody who has any connections with that, that would be great. There's a lot of information on the Somerset website, just /Ukraine. Yeah, just one last thing I also wanted to mention was just, we all know that we lost Chrissy Morrison this week, what's very sad. I just wanted to make a mention of the person that she was in this town.
I second that. Thanks, Dawn. Mel first, then Adam, then Andy.
Just a quick one. 2 councils ago, I asked questions, one about our MP and when he was going to reappear. And we got a kiss off on that one. The second one was about Shoezone, which is owned by some part of the NHS and has now been empty for well over a year in their ownership. And I think it's a scandal actually that a public sector body owns such a building, prominent building in the town. And it's worse now than it was when they actually purchased it. So have we made any progress in terms of finding out who owns it? What are they going to do with it? And if they're not going to do anything, can they put it back on the market?
Kate is ready with that one.
I am. So the NHS own it. They bought it to create a one-stop, bad signal over here, one-stop mental health hub for Frome. They've just completed an extensive feasibility study on the premises and have concluded that it is unlikely to provide the clinical space that they require, so they can use 2 of the 4 floors of the building. So they have listed it as a property for, I can't remember what the exact term is, but it's a property for sale, and they have to list it because they're a public sector organisation, so that other public sector organisations might bid for it. It's a relatively short period of time that it needs to be officially listed. They are also in discussions, I understand, with the people that were interested in purchasing it at the same time as they were. They are looking for an alternative site in Frome in which to, because they still have a commitment to deliver the project. They've just opened one in Bridgewater, so there's a model that we can look at. In the meantime, we have also connected them with colleagues in the county council who were looking to develop some work in the Frome area and to link things up, but also just, that just in case it was a suitable building for other public sector organisations. The difficulty with it, of course, is that there's no rear entrance, and the front entrance is not very accessible and comes in off the road by the bus stop. So what we anticipate is there will be some movement soon, one way or another.
Thank you, Kate. And then I had Adam.
Hello. Hi. Thanks to Dawn for updating from County Council. I can follow on that with there is a new financial incentive scheme for landlords to let their properties to Ukrainian refugees in particular from Somerset County Council. That's online, so that's useful to know. In terms of Somerset County Council future budgets, there's going to be some briefings next month for County Council to understand the budget situation. And there's a joint scrutiny meeting, which will be online as well as in person on the 1st of February. And the budget will be set on the 22nd of February at full council there. This is important because the message coming out of the County Council is that there's going to be a need for savings, and that some of the services that we were going to try and improve, but there won't be the money for that. So towns and parishes councils are going to be asked if they can anticipate what improvements to services that you want to make in the area and budget for those, or some of those at least. Of course, we won't know what the savings need to be until we start getting the briefings, and the scrutiny board meets on the 1st of February. But the papers will be available in front of that. So it might be an interesting time at County. On Saxon Vale, I've got some news. Of course, the planning board meets at Mendip next Wednesday, the 14th. And on the agenda is the Mayday Saxon Vale planning application with a raft of 37 proposed conditions and an 11-point plan for a Section 106 agreement. And the recommendation now from the officer is for approval of the application subject to agreement of a Section 106 agreement. The papers are online at the planning board at Mendip if you want to have a look. That'll be online as well as in person. And there's also, I think, a public statement coming out of Mendip District Council shortly. Councillors such as myself and other Mendip District Councillors have had a briefing note from the legal team about all the questions related to all the questions that have been asked in the last few months. That's not public knowledge yet. If you want to ask me questions, that I can answer those without sending you that, but hopefully there'll be something in the public domain shortly on that. Another interesting thing is a local community group called People for Paxsaddle have submitted an application for an asset of community value to be put on the fields at Paxsaddle Way between Paxsaddle and Lades Lane, and that will be determined by the 3-member panel in January. And I'm going to ask residents to send me any evidence they have. And I think Drew will as well, any evidence they have of those fields meeting the criteria that for an asset of community value. It doesn't matter what you think, whether you like the area or don't want it developed, that's irrelevant. The trick is going to be, does the site meet the criteria? That's very important. Other than that, I've had a nice meeting with Anita and Jane about speed limits at Frome Field. I've talked about refugees. I've talked to the Frome College about any extra support they need as well after the horrendous crash last week, because they might need extra support for that. There's also a Section 106 funding coming to play areas in Frome, 2 play areas, and I don't know Rob Holden, if he's here. Hello. So we talked about that, and hopefully there's some improvements to 1 or 2 play areas, or maybe another way of spending the money, which we need to discuss and agree, and not too in the not too distant future, because there may be a deadline there. And there's also new branding for the new council. How exciting! It's a it's a green background with a white dragon's head, rather than the red one that we've got at the moment. And no expense was spent on that. It's all in-house. I think that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Adam. Some interesting news there. Lastly, Andrew, because then we need to, okay, Andrew, and then I'll take one more question at the back, then we need to move on.
Yeah, last council, or maybe the one before, we did discuss that it'd be really helpful if Mendip were able to act as guarantor for Ukraine people looking to move into the private rented market. I wondered if there'd been any progress on that, please.
Thank you. Yes, I've managed to discuss this with the district council officer, Christina, who's, I think, discussed this with the town council team. And I think the issue is basically financial. Somerset has the second largest group of Ukrainian refugees in the country. And I think Bristol City Council offer a guarantor scheme for maybe a lower number. I'm not sure what the actual numbers are, but the issue is probably financial. But I will look into it further. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. One final question from the gentleman at the back. If you could say who you are, please. Into the microphone, please.
Hello, thank you. It's a comment on your item 4 agenda.
Oh, okay. Well, we're coming to that next. Rachel. Anne Hills online. Anne? Can anybody see it?
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, yes.
Hi. Yeah, it was just follow on to Dawn's information about council tax reduction. And anyone who has a dementia diagnosis gets 100% council tax reduction, and it's not commonly known. So add that to the list of people who don't have to pay council tax.
Thanks, Anne. Okay, moving on to a fairly substantial agenda item now. This is going to be for a decision on whether to approve the proposed design for School Street scheme in Frome. It's going to be led by Carla, Max and Nikki. So I will hand over to this delightful trio to kick off. Max, Mike.
Is that okay? Can you hear me? Fantastic. So I'm going to just set the context for this conversation, and then I'm going to hand over to Carla and Nikki to talk about the rationale and the detail of the scheme. I hope that we can have a better conversation related to cars than we had last time, where I felt like we had a horribly acrimonious debate, which I think showed just how under what stress the system in Frome is currently under. And so, yeah, I hope we can have a better conversation. I do think one rather useful thing did come out of it, though, only one, which was the statistic which totally stunned me, which was that from in 2020, there were 20,500 cars registered under DVLA in Frome, and now there are, so 1 year later, so not an up-to-date statistic, 24,200, so an 18% increase in cars. And that I think kind of sets out one of the real difficulties with the situation that we face. And I suppose what I wanted to just say right at the beginning is that there are no easy choices around any of this. As we try and intervene to do something about the situation, all of the choices that we make have difficulties attached to them. It's like if you don't do something, it's a problem. If you do something, it's a problem. And I kind of think that's what the debate last time showed, that you've got a bunch of residents who are dissatisfied with what's going on outside their houses, who then apply for a residence parking scheme, and that then causes a problem for somebody else. So in all of this, there are no easy choices. There are no pain-free solutions. One of the things that was talked about last time was this desire, or I think the promise that I think came from Somerset some time ago, to do a town-wide review of parking. Whoopee-doo. I mean, I don't really know in a sense what problem that will solve. I think what we have to have is a strategy for the whole town around travel and transport. I think that's the only thing that will do this situation any good. And within that, I think we need to think about what the elements of that strategy would be that we think that we would want to see. So things about varying the road network and building roads are long-term and expensive solutions. And actually, all the evidence shows that if you build something different, all that will happen is that demand will increase to fill the space. So that doesn't feel like a huge solution to me. And with the parking review, whilst it might be a helpful thing, it won't actually change the amount of space available. It won't actually change the number of cars in the town. It won't actually change the flow of traffic at peak times. So there are other things, I think, that we need to think about. And it's really useful, I think, the work that Philip's doing around public transport, but we also know that that is under threat and under difficulty. So I think there are other things that we might need to look at. There's exciting work going on in different parts of the country around this thing called demand responsive transport, people being able to kind of, find and book transport which suits particular situations at particular times rather than scheduled services. But I'm also interested in other things which aren't necessarily to do with cars, but impact and affect the travel around the town. So things like digital connectivity have had a huge impact. Technology is a mode of transport so that people don't have to make so many journeys to places, so that services can be available online, so that people don't have to travel all the time. There is some frightening statistic I think I discovered when we were doing the unitary work, which was that something like 80% of car journeys in Somerset are less than 10 minutes long. So it's something about changing the nature of the demand for this, which is really, really important. Workplace arrangements can also be a major part of that. It was really interesting, some of the stuff that's going on in Manchester at the moment, where they've tracked the number of people who work for the public sector who travel across Manchester on a daily basis. People who get off up in Salford and go and work for Tameside, when they all work for local authorities. And so changing the building arrangements so that people can actually work wherever they want within the local government context, again, cuts the need for that kind of transport. So we need to think, I think, in the long term, imaginatively about this stuff, because really the goal that we're trying to get to is to increase the amount of active travel, is to increase the number of people who can do that. And if you work for the public sector, whether you are town council or district council or county council or police or schools or any of those things, then we are all, nudge theory says, choice architects. We make certain things easy, we make certain things hard. What we're going to present to you tonight isn't an easy choice, will inconvenience some people, but right now there's an awful lot of people who are being inconvenienced by the current situation. And the people who are most inconvenienced by the current situation are the people who are trying to do the right thing, the people who are trying to walk to school, the people who are trying to do all of those things so that they're not using cars. We make life more difficult for them right now. And what's behind this Safer Streets proposition is to try and make a good choice easier for those people and support people in making the right choices. And it will cause some inconvenience for people, but not as much inconvenience or damage or harm as is being done for people right now. So Carla and Nikki are going to set out the bones of the scheme, but we introduce it not because it's a panacea, and not because it's an easy choice, but we think it's the right choice. So we'll see what you think at the end of it. Then the final point says just this is the beginning of a conversation. This is a trial we are proposing. We're going to try something out. We're going to see how it goes. We want to stay in dialogue with the community. So even though this is a decision tonight, it's a decision to make a trial. It's a decision to have an ongoing dialogue with the town.
Thank you, Max.
So I think everybody knows, but for people online, so I'm Carla. I'm a councillor in one of the wards where this is taking place, Oakfield Ward. I'm also a resident in that ward, and I'm also a parent of 2 young children. So what I'm going to talk about is why we think this is a good idea. As Max has pointed out, it's not a panacea, but we're going to talk about why we think it is a good solution and why we recommend that council does agree to the next steps, agree on the current design, and that we can go on to the next steps. So I think, can we go to the next slide? rather than me using the clicker. So first of all, what is this scheme? So just a few key points. As Max said, it's an 18-month pilot. We aim to start spring 2023, so that will go to autumn 2024. It's fully funded, so Frome is not paying for this. This is coming from Public Health England and the Department of Transport. Obviously, we're paying with our staff time, just to know that there's a lot of backing behind this project. And those are, so we got Public Health England, Department of Transport, and it's done in partnership with Sustrans, who are experts in this, who have run school streets in other areas. And obviously we're working in partnership with Somerset County Council. So Nick is going to go into a lot of detail about these 3 points, but just heading, it's about timed road closures around 4 schools and 1 nursery. The aim is to introduce a 20-mile-per-hour zone around these 4 schools, and other additional traffic calming measures. So quiet ways of slowing down traffic, basically. So those are the key features. Why do we think it's important? First of all, road traffic danger. So we've got an example just this year in September of a child being hit outside Trinity School. Got a little notice from their newsletter. Last year, this was an accident on Green Lane, the Domets Lane Junction, which is near Bright Stars Nursery. So, and many, many near misses. So anybody that lives in the area, anybody that does that school run, basically you see them every day. So children are most likely to be killed or injured during the school run. So we know that's the case. So far, luckily, there hasn't been a serious accident, but it does feel like it's kind of waiting to happen. Anybody walks those streets. How will we measure this? So how will we know that school streets is going to reduce traffic, and how is it going to reduce accidents? So Somerset County Council will be monitoring traffic and pedestrian volumes both before and during the trials. So we do have a way of knowing whether this outcome is actually being achieved. Second problem that we're hoping and we believe we will address is air pollution. So I found this really shocking, actually, that first of all, we know that children are exposed to particularly high levels outside schools with engine running, idling, which happens a lot. What residents here from Oakfield Road, we see this directly outside of Oakfield School, parents sitting there with the engine running, particularly in winter. But what I didn't know was that even if you drive your children to school because you don't want them to breathe the air, it's actually worse in the car. So I didn't know that. So how will we measure this? So how will we know if the air quality is going to be improved? Obviously, we're not in Bristol, we're not in central London. Our air is not that as bad, but we still know that it is going to be worse directly outside schools. So the Public Health England are setting up air quality monitors, again, both before and during the trial. I think that's enough on that one. So we have a lot of questions around, will this just move the problem? Will it move into the side streets? Will it move to other parts of Frome? So the evidence of when you introduce a school street is that this is not what happens. Initially, yes. And initially, yes, there will be basically chaos as people are getting into a new routine. Anyone that's done the school run knows how stressful that is. So we are asking people to change their behavior, and there will be some chaos to begin with. But the evidence shows that once that's settled down and more people are leaving their cars, the people that have to drive will still drive, but the people that don't have to drive, and now it's a nicer route to school, a safer route to school, more people will basically be engaged in active travel. So we're looking at basically improving the whole neighborhood or the whole area. And of course, walking to school, cycling to school helps people to concentrate when they arrive at school. It's healthier for parents, reduces carbon emissions, and reduces what you're spending on fuel. How will we measure this? So surveys with pupils, parents, and residents, measuring the increase in walking and cycling, and also the perception of safety. So there's both the kind of real dangers and there's also the perception. So we're going to also be measuring that. So these are the problems that we're trying to address, and these that we think this solution can really help with. Nikki is now going to talk about some of the evidence base behind this and also the real details of the scheme. Also, you've got at your tables some printouts of the scheme. So it's literally street by street. So if you want to see where the markings are going to change, where the crossings are going to be, it's on your table.
Hi everyone, I'm Nikki Brain. I'm Resilience Manager at Frome Town Council. I've been working on this project for the last year and a few months since I came into post. So picking up from where Carla left off, what's the evidence? So there are now over 400 school street schemes in the UK, many of them in London, but they are becoming more and more popular outside of London. The reason being that actually the school streets that were implemented first showed incredibly strong results in terms of reducing traffic, cutting emissions and increasing walking and cycling. So there was really strong evidence from the outset from the first 4 school streets that were implemented. And then more widely, a more recent review of 34 different pilots showed the same strong positive trend in those areas. And also fundamentally that support for schemes increases dramatically after a trial period. So obviously the concept can seem scary and it could be difficult to picture how it might work. But we've seen consistently that actually public support for schemes increases after a trial period. And actually that photo that we've put in at the bottom is of a protest that was happening this week in Tower Hamlets at the removal of a school street scheme that had been in place for just over a year. People have got used to it. They enjoyed the way that the street was safer and people were able to walk and cycle. So they've been out in the street protesting its removal. Next slide, please, Laura. So hopefully many of you will have seen or been involved in the co-design process that we've been through with Sustrans on this scheme. The original scheme was introduced back in 2020 as a COVID response. And you might remember some plans around a 24-hour road closure. That was scrapped. And we went back to square one. We hired Sustrans as a leading walking and cycling charity and transport engineers who've worked on many of these schemes across the UK. And with them, we've worked to do a co-design process with the community. So that started with 7 public events last September and October, where I went out into the streets, into the parks, outside the schools, in the town centre, to talk to people about actually where are the pinch points, where are the problems, where do you perceive danger, what have you seen, what have your experiences been? They've used the feedback from that engagement to come up with a concept design, which is the design that we put out in April. It was a high-level design, not the technical designs that you've got on the tables here. So that concept design was consulted on back in April. We had a month for people to comment. We had a consultation out online. We had drop-ins again on the streets at the schools, as well as drop-ins here at Town Hall. We put a leaflet out in the Frome Times, which hopefully reached every household, as well as 5,000 letters to the residents in the roads immediately surrounding the area. And also we've been meeting with school staff throughout the process. So we went to speak to all of the school staff at each of the schools with the designs as well. So just to touch on the result of that consultation back in April. The full results are published online or will be very shortly if they're not on our website already. This is basically the sort of quantitative stats. So you'll see it was fairly evenly split, slightly more towards the high and very high in terms of whether people thought it would achieve the outcomes that we're setting out in terms of supporting healthy travel, improving air quality, improving safety. It's a fairly even third split. And I think that sort of neutral middle ground really just emphasizes that we haven't done it yet. We're proposing a trial and it's actually quite difficult to know until we've seen it in practice how it will work. And I think that's sort of reflected in people's sort of neutrality on that. So that's really why we feel the need to at least give it a go. It is a trial we're proposing and we want to kind of work with the community on that trial over the 18 months. Next slide, please, Laura. So just to get into the detail of the proposed scheme, you've got some drawings on your tables here. If you're in the room, they're also published online on our website. If you're online and want to go and have a look at those in more detail. This one is a very simplified one that I have highlighted myself, so sorry about that. It was just an easier way to present it than the detailed ones. But basically, as Carla said, we're looking at time closures. That's the fundamental part of a school street scheme, is relatively short time closures outside, pick up and drop off times to ease the build up of traffic right outside the school gates. So we're looking at between 8 and 9:15 outside from Critchell, the top of Oakfield Road at Broadway. And we've also included, after feedback from the consultation in April, Whitemore Lane in the road closure, because it was clear that that is a really unsuitable diversion for traffic. So we don't want traffic coming up, being stopped at Critchell and diverting down there. Park Road is a slightly shorter road closure, given that it's just one school up there. So we're just looking at half an hour in the morning and 45 minutes in the afternoon. And really crucially, residents, blue badge holders, buses and emergency services will all be able to go through at any time. So it's not a barrier, there's not a physical barrier, it's not restricting people who need to get through And we're also proposing, this is partly as a result of the feedback from the consultation also, there was an extension of the 20-mile-an-hour zone proposed that's been extended slightly further in the design that we're submitting. So that also includes White Mill Lane, although that's covered up by the red there as the time closure point. So anything in dark blue there is the additional 20-mile-an-hour zone proposed. And then you'll see on the plans in more detail exactly where these things are being proposed. But general traffic calming and street enhancements. So we're looking at things like more benches, more seating for people. So if you're walking to school to pick up your children, somewhere comfortable to sit. Patterns outside the schools to make it really clear that these are school zones, that there will be children walking and crossing and that they should be given priority. And also planters, which as well as being attractive should also act as natural chicanes and further slow traffic. So when we did the initial consultation back September, October last year, a lot of the things that we're hearing from people in terms of what they wanted to see were way out of the budget that we had been given for an 18-month trial, and were also really out of the scope of an 18-month school street trial. Because we're working with Sustrans and they manage the National Cycle Network, they have access to funding for upgrades. And so they've applied for some additional funding to put in what's called a quiet way along Oakfield and Somerset Roads along the NCN route. So that's enabling us to deliver some of the more permanent measures that people are asking for, especially around crossings. So you'll see this drawing in the corner here is of a raised table junction crossing, and we've got those proposed at the two main junctions along that road, the one on outside the nursery on Green Lane and the one right by Oakfield School. This image on the right is of something called a median strip. So that doesn't basically change anything. It's just a visual aid to actually slow traffic. It just makes the road look narrower. So on those particularly wide bits of Somerset and Oakfield, that's being proposed as a traffic calming measure as well, alongside the 20-mile-an-hour roundels and more planters and trees. And finally, the major thing that we heard back in September, October was the need for better crossings at either end of that road. So junctions at Broadway and the Butts. So Sustrans have also secured some funding, £20,000 to design up junctions at both those locations. And they're now applying for funding for the capital to deliver those things. So that's not confirmed yet, but they are working on it and they do have access to that funding. So if that's secured, that would be a really, really positive result for us. And as Carla's already said, this is a trial. We don't expect it to be perfect. We just want to see whether the impacts that have been seen elsewhere in the country, the positive results that have been seen, can be replicated here. We want to work with the schools, we want to work with parents and residents to make it a success. It's a problem that's only going to get worse unless we do something. And the idea is that we review the scheme regularly, so at 6 and 12 months with stakeholders. We'll also have Common Place open for continuous feedback. We'll be kind of holding events throughout the 18-month trial. As Carla said, we completely recognise it will be disruptive initially, but the current situation is already bad. And actually over time, we hope that we'll be able to see the same positive results that other schemes have, and that will calm down and make the environment better for everybody, whether you have to drive, whether you want to walk. Hopefully it will just be a better experience for everyone. And there's really strong evidence from the other schemes that they do achieve what we want to see. So in terms of next steps, the designs that we are asking for approval on tonight have been finalized in terms of Sustrans involvement. They're kind of drawn up to standards that would be passed over to a contractor. They still need to go through a road safety audit process, and they still need to be signed off by Somerset County Council. So that is the caveat in terms of what we're signing off, is that there may still be changes made. Subject to that going through, we're planning on hosting public meetings. Critchhill, Avanti and Oakfield have all offered to host public meetings in January to kind of look at the next steps in terms of how are we going to make this work together? How can we make it as successful as possible when it comes in? We're hoping the scheme will be delivered early next year. This is subject to legal agreement with Somerset County Council going through, and also contractor availability. So we're not able to say a definite date that's going to start. We're still working really towards kind of Easter time. But we'll keep everyone updated as best we can on the timing as we go through. Okay, so I think we're going to do some discussion now.
I think we're going to hear from a couple of schools first.
Absolutely.
But just very, very briefly, thank you. Yes, please. You could just say who you are first.
No, that's just okay.
Right, so hello everybody, my name's Alison Armstrong. I'm a year 6 teacher up at Avanti Park, and I'm also leading personal development. So that's any part of the work we do with the children outside of the academic curriculum. So as a school, we're very invested in sustainable travel. We've run several initiatives throughout the different year groups. We run from year 1 reception right through to year 8. Something that we've successfully managed lately was our Eco Schools application. And this, we now have a flag, which we're flying outside the school on the flagpole. And that's the report that came back from our application acknowledged our strong links with Frome Town Council, specifically referring to the Safer Streets initiative. We've taken part in a lot of local and national initiatives to promote sustainable travel. We're very lucky as a parent body, we have a great deal of support for these initiatives. The things we've taken part in have included the Big Walk and Wheel, which is a national sustainable stroke active travel, and a week, and it take 2 weeks, sorry, and that is an annual thing, and we're just about to sign up again for that this year. We've also taken part with Mojo Moves activities. We've had bicycle fun days. So this drip feeds this idea with all of the different children, the different year groups, about that important active travel message. We're lucky where we are that we are in a cul-de-sac. We're not actually part of a rat run. However, traffic is an issue. It is heavy up and down our part of Frome. A part of the work that we do that links to sustainable travel is through our rights respecting curriculum, which is another initiative that we're promoting at the moment. And there are a couple of rights that are really important. The rights were drawn up by the United Nations, linked to the children's physical development and also their need and their right to a clean environment. So I'd just like to say, just to sum it up, that from a school perspective, we as adults have a duty to educate and inform this next generation about the dangers that they're facing, about the real strong issue of climate change. They are going to be the movers and the shakers. You know, they are going to have to address these really difficult issues. And so we are talking to them about them in an age-appropriate way, but we also encourage them very much to do their bit so that they have a voice. That's another one of their rights laid down by the United Nations, but they really need to feel that they have a voice, that they are able to have their say, that they'll be listened to, and that they can do their bit, play their part in creating a better future for all of the children. So it's something that we're really supportive of as a school up at Avanti Park.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're not going to take questions at this point. We're going to
I think we've just had a little oh sorry, there's one more teacher from Critcho online who'd also like to talk.
Okay. Hello, would you like to speak? I'm sorry.
Hi, sorry, I was just typing hi. I'm Sophie Addison. I'm executive head of Critchill School, Park Road, and another resource space in Bath. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
So I was just in the moment of typing. For a lot of our students, it's quite difficult because they don't necessarily reside in Frome, and therefore lots of them rely on Somerset or out of county transport. However, we recognise that being able to develop skills within a range of travel mediums is an integral part of preparation for adulthood. So whilst it will present us as a school with a number of challenges, we would welcome those challenges and see them as opportunities for our young people to develop. So we are in full support.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're just going to change the format of this slightly, and instead of table discussions, we are just going to open the floor to questions for what you've just heard. So Drew, you had your hand up way before, so we'll go Drew, Anita, Nick, and then the gentleman in the rust jumper, and then I'll come back for more.
Is that better? Can you hear me now?
So, yeah.
Yeah. So firstly, yeah, I welcome this. It's great. It's going to upset people. It's going to disrupt things. But to leave, carry on as we are, isn't acceptable. We've got to change. That's the first thing. The second thing is, as much as the council comes up with some really great ideas like school streets, the schools need to be part of this. So we need to have bus shelters, bike storage facilities not filled with school furniture, which is happening right now. We need to see schools having sufficient cycling parking places, which currently there aren't. If you turn up to certain schools, which my son goes to, there's insufficient bike parking. So we need to see more bike parking in schools. We're all part of this problem, and we can't just let it be down to local authorities to wave the wand. We've all got to be part of it. And finally, I want to appeal to the town council for help. 2 years ago, Barry O'Leary and I passed a motion at Mendip District Council to stop idling outside schools. It was meant to be backed up with prosecutions, or at the very least warnings for people who left their engines running. Nothing is done, and I'm seeking desperately the help of this council to please contact Mendip District Council and let it follow through on the democratic vote that it took 2 years ago to insist that people turn their engines off. I asked a taxi driver to turn his engine off near a school this morning, and I just got abuse. So guys, please help me on this. Frome Town Council, let's get people to turn their engines off. Let's give the people of Frome clean air. Thank you.
Noted, thanks, Drew. Nita.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to Max and Carla and to Nikki and everyone else who's been involved in this scheme, because it is a mammoth piece of work. I think it's hugely important, but I think one of the things that we saw when we worked with schools quite recently, asking children over the period of a week to do a virtual walk through all our twin towns to get to Poland, the expectation, or what the aim and the hope was, that they would be able to walk between them 1,350 miles roughly. And I think the thing that surprised everybody was the amount of support and enthusiasm for that scheme, because ultimately they walked well over 5,000 miles. And I think that just shows how much enthusiasm and interest there is in this sort of thing that comes from the children themselves as well as the parents. So I think it has a very good opportunity to work. I recognize that there may well be some difficulty over the first 2 or 3 weeks until it beds in. But certainly I think the rewards will be well worth it. We definitely have to do something to make sure that our children are kept safe during those periods. So I welcome the initiative. I think it's a wonderful scheme, and I really hope that we back it the way we should.
Thank you, Anita. Nick, I think you were next.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, likewise, great scheme. Well done, Nikki, and councillors who've been involved in it. What I would like, it's probably too late on this occasion, but I've been contacted by a number of Keyford residents about the access into the 20-mile-an-hour zone. So a lot of kids or young people walk up Water Lane or Redland Terrace and cross over the butts to go up to the park or up Somerset Road. At the moment, that stretch of road, everyone knows the butts is a bit of a nightmare anyway, but that stretch of road has not no 20-mile-an-hour limit. So cars speed over, there's a bit of a blind summit, and it is really dangerous. And I see lots and lots of children going across, and I don't know if it is possible to extend the 20-mile-an-hour limit to come up from the Keyford Lane to Water Lane section. That's all.
Thank you. Gentleman in the red jumper.
Thank you. My name's Craig Bowden. I'm a local resident in the Oakfield Road area, and my thanks to Carla for letting me know that this item was on the agenda this evening. I fully support what you're planning to do. I think you've got a lot of challenges, and I don't relish the job that you've got to do. My concern will be how you police, whether it's a resident in a car coming along the roads. I avoid school times leaving where I live because I have an opportunity that I don't have to get out of the house. But I wish you well, and you'll have my full support. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Here. Any other comments, questions, or observations on that?
I'm just wondering if Nikki might answer Nick's question about the 20-mile-an-hour. I asked her the same question today about Broadway. So I don't know if many people know there was an accident on Broadway just this week where a child was hit. People also speed up that road. So also, I know you mentioned it in the presentation, but also mentioning about the crossings again might be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So I agree. I think it would be good to look at whether we can extend it to those places. I think the reason that Sustrans included mostly the residential streets rather than the main roads was that it's much easier to get them past for 20-mile-an-hour. I think it needs the average traffic speed needs to be under a certain limit for them to consider it. So it will be a lot more challenging to look at the main roads, but it doesn't mean it shouldn't be done, because I think everyone agrees there's a massive safety issue. The crossings, hopefully, you know, fingers crossed that Sustrans managed to pull off getting the funding they're confident. So they would hopefully improve safety as well. But I think, yeah, we definitely need to pick up the 20-mile-an-hour. I think more widely, I know Adam's been involved separately in conversations around Froomfield. There's a justification for it in a lot of more kind of central roads in Frome as well.
Thank you, Nikki. No.
This is a comment to Dawn, really, and our other county councillors, if any of them are listening online. Some people will remember that the county council wouldn't approve courtesy crossings in the town centre just days before we were going to start work, because they didn't want the maintenance into the future and they didn't think that they would be safe enough. So there may still yet be a slip on this one, so it just needs to be chaperoned through the county council if that's possible, because I think we all know that highway engineers can be quite conservative in their views, as experienced at the last council meeting. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Mel. Any of the team want to come back on that, on any more questions, Nikki?
I wasn't involved in Marketplace, that was before my time, but we have from the beginning of this project been working in partnership with Somerset County Council and been meeting with officers on a monthly basis. And we've shared the designs with them throughout. Obviously, it hasn't gone through technical approval yet, but they have seen it at every stage, and we've asked them to flag things that they think might have been an issue. So I'm not saying that means it's guaranteed, but they've been fully involved throughout. So I'm really hopeful that times have changed.
Thanks, Nikki, and so were we. We did all of those things as well, and it still fell. So let's just be careful on this one.
And Nikki, did you have a response to the question around enforcement that the gentleman at the back asked?
So we don't want to go down a route of permits, especially not for a trial, but we thought what would be good would be to have some kind of sticker that residents can put in their windows saying they support the school street scheme, something along those lines that's a lot more informal. Not nicer, friendlier, because we don't want to go down a route of penalty and enforcement. Yeah, and we actually want people to we want people to comply because they want to support the scheme. So we'll see how that goes in the first instance. You know, we'd love to kind of talk to residents more about how that can work. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for contributing to that conversation. Thank you to the team for presenting. We are going to take a vote, but before we do, I'd like to propose an additional recommendation, which would be that we approve Nikki to go out to tender in the first instance. You can see that's written in red. So that's to delegate authority to the resilience manager to invite tenders for the delivery of the school streets contract to be funded externally and to complete the necessary legal agreements. And I am going to propose that. Does anyone second that? Tracy, thank you. Yay, nay? Many yays? Is that you, Nan? Is that you, Nan? Is that unanimous?
That's me, Nan. I can't see anyone voting against, so I'm saying that's unanimous unless someone waves an alternative card.
Okay, and then to approve the design of the proposed school streets scheme and work with Somerset County Council and Sustrans to engage the community to implement it and to monitor its effectiveness, while noting that because the scheme is subject to technical audits and sign off from Somerset Highways Authority, it may change at the margins. I have a proposer for that. Philip, seconded. Nick. Everyone.
That again looks unanimous to me. Is any town councillor not voting in favour of it, just to double check? And what we did there, just to clarify, was take the vote on both of those recommendations. Yeah.
Well done, team. Good luck. That's great. That's extremely exciting. Okay, agenda item 5, another decision whether to restart the Boyle Cross fountain. Rob, I believe this is one for you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Is that working? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So Rob Holden, Environment Manager, and so yeah, everybody here is familiar with the fountain, and we're going to walk through where recent developments, where it's at now, and then look at next steps with a view to taking a decision. So just very briefly, the background: it was installed in 1871. Is that working? By the Reverend Boyle as providing drinking water, and it fell into disuse sometime after the Second World War, and it has been repurposed in the past. So we can see it's been a planter in the past. As part of the phase 1 works for the marketplace, it was recommissioned in 2018. The cost of it was £100,000 approximately. And then most recently, there was a technical fault early in the year. It was switched off, and for most of this year, it hasn't been running. So that's just a very quick canter through where we've got to for today. Next slide, please, Laura. Just a little bit on the behind the scenes side of the fountain, which most of you probably haven't seen. There's actually a lot of complexity to managing the fountain. All you see at the top, obviously, is the 4 little jets of water, but what there is there's an underground plant room. To access that takes 2 people to lift the manhole cover. You have to set up the safety barriers, and you're going down, when you go down into it, into what is technically a confined space, which requires that little orange meter to be dangled down into the space to confirm the air quality is okay. You have to have special PPE and ways of working to go down in there. And you need a harness, and then you can go down in there. And just to say that when you're down in there, what the plant room does is it circulates and it purifies the water. And it does that with a fair degree of complexity in terms of the chemical dosing, the sump pumps to take away the surface water, the flow pumps to circulate the water, pumps that can reverse to clean. There's filter, there's dosing pumps, there's chemicals, there's electronic equipment, there's monitoring. So just to sort of say in passing that there's a fair degree of complexity down in what is actually quite a difficult space to access. And in terms of context, in Ranger time, there's a weekly check on how the plant is running and the chemicals and the dosing. And so the rangers open it up, descend on a weekly basis, and on a monthly basis, contractors come in and they actually do a more in-depth maintenance, and the rangers help with that. So in terms of manpower, it takes 1.5 days a month, something like that, maybe slightly more, around about 1.5 days a month to keep the fountain running. Thank you. Next slide. So the key question is around the cost. So at the moment, as I said, there is a repair that needs to be done. It's not too involved. There's a new acid tank, a new UV lamp, and a new pressure valve. Total cost is £1,432 to get it to the point where we could switch it on. So it wouldn't cost too much to be able to get it to switch on. If we did that, then there's the question of the running costs. So we've done quite a lot of work looking at the breakdown of these costs and whether there's any savings that could be made. And for a full year, you can see the breakdown on the left-hand side. The actual contractor costs is about half of it, just under £8,000. And then the other main items are the chemicals, the dosing systems and probes and membrane caps and calibration solutions, all of which perish after a period of time. This is actually here assuming they'll perish after 2 years, which is extending the manufacturer's expected lifetime, but that's because we're doing such active maintenance. So if you put in all the costs, you come out with 17,430. At the moment, the annual maintenance budget set for the fountain is £15,000. So if we were to switch it on now, it would cost more than what is currently allocated. One option would be to not run the fountain during the winter months. So if we ran it through to the end of October, switched it off for November through to the end of February, switched it back on for March, you would then avoid that there are some risks to do with running water in winter, obviously to do with overflowing, freezing. We have had an issue in the past to do with that. So you would overcome those risks, and it would be running when most people were out and about in the marketplace in the spring, summer and autumn. If you were to do that, you would reduce the cost by about 2/3, because 1/3 of the year it's not running. So that would bring it to just under 13,000. So those are two options with costs for how what the cost would be to get the fountain running. 17, just over 17, just under 13. Okay, thank you, Laura. So what is the other option? The other option was obviously to turn it off. It has been turned off in the past. There would be, if it was turned off, we could drain the system, and we could basically mothball it so that almost nothing was happening down there. The one thing that would probably need to happen is the sump pumps, which drain surface water, which can go through that manhole cover. It's almost impossible to stop all the water going down. So some water goes down, so a little bit of electricity for the sump pumps just to stop it filling up with water. And that's about it for the ongoing cost, almost nothing. And one question to think about is, if it was mothballed, would that mean the end of the fountain? Talking to the contractor, they say the pumps, if you switch them off, they will begin to seize. They work by being switched on and running. So if you switch them off, there would be some of the equipment would likely need to be replaced depending on how long you switched it off for. So worst case scenario, which I've costed up here, is if those items that are likely to fail, if they all failed, what would be the cost to recommission it? And the cost would be about £15,000 to take it out of a mothballing. And that is a quick canter through. So that's the background and the possible cost. So there's basically 3 options. I mean, you could tweak the number of months. Basically, there's 3 options. Do a repair and spend the annual maintenance costs. Do a repair and do the annual running costs for shorter period, or switch it off, mothball it, possibly recommission it at a later date. And the recommendation is to choose one of those 3 options.
Before we go on to that, I'm going to take some questions. And yes, and then Steve, then Mark, then Nick.
Thanks, Rob. When I was reading the papers on this, I saw a comment that those figures don't actually include the ranger's time, on the basis that actually ranger time is already budgeted separately. But given that, you know, we're always short of ranger time, there's surely an opportunity cost to deploy those people's hours doing something else. I would argue that the actual costs that we're talking about should include that ranger time, which I think is roughly 10% of the numbers you were talking about there. So about 1,700 in a full year and 1,200 in a part year. Is that correct?
It is one way of working out the costings. What I would say in answer to that is it's about a day and a half a month, so that you can work out the cost of what a day and a half a month is. It isn't extra cost. If we don't do this, it is opportunity cost in terms of them not being able to do other things. So it is definitely that, but it's not actual cost, because we'll have the same number of rangers. Whichever decision we take tonight, the ranger bill will be the same at the end of the year. But you're absolutely right. There is time involved.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Rob. The incidence of bubbles in the fountain in previous years, does that? Oh, that's very pretty. Does that contribute to, or does that increase maintenance costs? I think is the first part to the question, and then following on from your answer, would there be an option? And again, I know pumps are a tricky little things. For it to be on some sort of timer where the actual fountain gets, is automatically switches off at a certain time of night and then comes back on during the day to sort of try and sort of alleviate some of those issues.
Yep, thanks, Steve. The bubbles, if you Google Boyles Cross Fountain, that is one of the first pictures that comes up. They don't cause a massive maintenance issue. What we have to do is we have to add in a chemical that stops the frothing occurring. It stops frothing almost immediately. We do have to go out there with that chemical. So that's not a huge maintenance issue. It doesn't cause issues to the pumps. The question about timing, we haven't explored it, but I don't see why that wouldn't be possible to have it on a timer. And if you wanted it switched off, like between 12 and 7 or whatever in the night, and there would be a cost saving to that as well. Not the main cost saving, to be fair, but there would be a cost saving because the main costs are the contractors coming out, the chemicals, and they would still be being used, but there would be an electrical cost saving. And so that could be looked at. I guess there'd be a cost to getting the equipment to enable that to be switched on and off that we could look at, but it is an option.
Thank you very much, Mark, and then Nick.
Thank you. When I was councillor in 2018, I was given the honour of becoming part of the little committee that looked after Boyle Cross in conjunction with Mendip District Council at that time. I was amazed at the complexity of the fountain when I looked into it and how much was in that secret layer underneath. And but at that time we shared 50-50 costs with Mendip District Council. And we were in happier times. We had money, not necessarily to burn, but it wasn't that much of a dent in our finances. Things are very different now. We've been given the whole area to look after ourselves, so we're responsible for 100% of the costs. I understand that the point that Steve makes about the bubbles, that is somebody has to be called out for that, and I understand it affects the filters as well. That was something that I remember discussing with your predecessor. I just think the optics of it at the moment look wrong. £17,000 a year, that's more than we give Fair Frome and the grant. and I'll put my hands up as a trustee of Fairfrome. But it's when people are struggling to pay their bills, and we have a stream of work in our own council about alleviating the cost of living crisis. I think the optics of us, what looks like pouring money down a drain and spending £120 a month on electricity when people are struggling to pay for electricity, I think it just looks wrong at the moment. And I really can't support it continuing at the moment. So I would be happy to mothball this until things look a lot brighter.
We'll take a vote shortly. Nick, then Mel.
Perhaps Mel should go first.
Mel, then Nick.
I'll let Nick go.
Nick, then Mel.
Okay, Rob, first of all, thank you so much for really detailed. I think a group of us, or some of us, were really concerned because at one point we were giving figures it's going to cost 60,000 to start it again if it was mothballed, which kind of distorted the whole thinking. So I'm interested why we got those figures. I go with Andy's point around opportunity costs. I absolutely think that's something we should always consider. I know it's not an actual additional cost, but you know what we do with probably the most visible part of the town council ranges is really key. And as you know, I've got loads of plans for how we could occupy them elsewhere. So thank you very much for all the detail, but I would agree with what Mark has just said. I don't think we can go with it. I won't vote for it.
Mel.
Thanks, Nick. I can't believe we're talking about this really, because if it was anything else like the van or chimney falling down in the town hall, it would have just got fixed. So I can't understand why we didn't just fix it as it became part of the feature of what the council provides. If there was any increase, it could be put into next year's budget and people could make a decision from there. So that's the first point. The second is, we've all talked in this room, some of us more than others, about how we make the town centre attractive, interesting, even sexy, the words being used. And I like the bubbles. If they're not causing any problems, actually, it's fun. We've just spent money improving the Boyles Cross, and I like what's in there, despite some previous debates. So why would we want to go backwards? Fountains are unusual. We've seen now, but we've actually got one that works, and at little cost, we could put it into order. The running costs are well less than 1% of our budget. So it's an important thing to do, and I think it might be more important than some of the other things that the Rangers do. I mean, that's a decision for you to make, Rob. But we shouldn't just say it's an opportunity cost, and therefore, that needs to be charged for. And let's just be honest. If we put this into mothball, it'll never come back again. This will be a waste of the money that we put in previously. It's a waste of an opportunity, and it's an attractive feature in the town. So there are going to be decisions that we're going to have to make in the next few years. They're going to be similar to this, but we haven't got to just say, oh, we haven't got to lose our nerve on actually making sure that the town stays attractive, and that we as a council are part of that, and that we initiate it and we encourage other people to spend their money in the town centre and the shopkeepers and so on and so forth. So I find it bizarre that we're actually having this conversation this evening. I'm kind of slightly disappointed in some of the responses. So I will be supporting it.
Thank you. Lisa, then Fiona. And then Tracy.
Grabbing a quick word with Peter. There are opportunities on the Boyles Cross to get money in from traders. And my understanding from Peter is that anything above 5 traders goes to Mendip, but anything below, and I could be getting that wrong, so jump in if you need to, goes to Frome Town Council. So for me, that supports opportunity with a nice fountain, with some activity going on in the centre that would provide opportunity for some traders there, which could look to mitigate some of the costs that we're putting into getting that fountain started again.
Thanks, Lisa. Fiona.
So a quick question and then a comment, if that's okay. Will there be any additional costs if we do turn it off for those 4 months in terms of beginning of March turning it on again? There would be.
There wouldn't be anticipated to be. If you switch the pumps off, there's a risk that the pumps will seize. Having said that, we switched it on the other day and the pumps have been switched off for a number of months. I wouldn't anticipate there being the probability. You couldn't rule out that there might be. So that's a fair point. But I think it would be sensible to plan on there not being a cost because it's a short period.
Okay. And then in terms of the actual decision, I mean, first of all, I mean, I both disagree with something Mel said and actually agree with something else he said. So I think it's really important we're making this decision transparently and publicly, and that those numbers are open and available to anyone who wants to find out how much this is costing, and that we are having this debate because I think it is public money and it's town money. It's from the precept, it's from every single person in this town, and we need to be really clear. And I think it is, you know, potentially can be seen as something that is not essential at a really difficult time. Having said that, I do actually agree. I think I've been backwards and forwards on this a lot, and I understand really difficult time. But I also quite often keep coming back to, well, what is our role as a town council? And I think, and it's something I keep sort of coming back to in different situations. And I think that actually one of our roles, or our main role, however you want to look at it, is to manage the spaces that we own and to manage them in the way that is best for the people and the community of Frome. And I think that we cannot solve the cost. You know, we cannot, like, if we could give money to every single person, if we could stop any person from being cold and hungry in Frome this winter, I would take it in a heartbeat. I think we would all say that, but we can't do it. It's not, as you know, we've done everything that we can possibly can with supporting the warm spaces, with supporting Fair Frome as much as possible. But ultimately, it's something that is so much bigger than us, this issue. And we just can't, it's not, you know, we can't solve it. And this is something that we can do. And actually, it's something Rachel said to me when I was talking to her about it a while ago. And she said that just because it's a difficult time doesn't mean that we can't have nice things. And I've sort of come back to that a little bit, in that, you know, it is a sign of, I think, the changes that Nick has made, not just Nick, the Rangers and everyone, the town council has made, that Nick has led on with the seating and the planters. It makes it such a lovely space. And I just think the fountain will probably be a really nice, you know, like, it will just make it a lovely area to sit, and that has value in difficult times. I mean, personally, I really like the idea of just turning off over for the 4 months, keeping it to a minimum, but still having it. I think it'd be really fun to like turn it on in March and like have the water going again, like a sign of spring. So personally, I would vote for the 12,000.
Thank you, Fiona. Tracy, then Andrew.
I'm Spartacus. We're all at it, aren't we? I've changed my mind completely on it. Just thought we're all confessing. I was totally against it as a waste of money, but I now think that I totally agree actually with Mel's argument that if it was anything else, it would probably just be fixed and that would it, and we wouldn't all be having this enormous discussion about it. And I think we should have beautiful things in hard times, in the same way that I think you should put luxury chocolate biscuits into the donations at the supermarket, not the cheap ones actually. And in the long run, we'll be glad we did it. I also think, we can't get into this here, coming from a marketing perspective, I do on absolutely everything. There are sponsorship opportunities there. We could, I don't know, we could find some way of making it pay for maybe 50% of itself by sponsoring or something through businesses. So I think we go for it.
Thank you, Tracy. Andrew.
Yeah, just quickly, the other factor that I think has come into play very recently is the sad news that the HSBC is pulling out of that iconic building right next door to this site. So I think it may well be worth us investing some money to keep that activity going right in the heart of our town.
And lastly, I think Max, before we go on to vote, then Anita, then we're going to vote.
So I agree. I mean, I agree with all the points that have just been made. I don't really kind of get the point about a sort of visiting a blight on the town while you know, I don't know where we stop with that. We turn off the fountain. Do we not put plants in the planters? Do we, you know? I don't really understand where that logic leads us to, really, other than to a rather miserable experience for people. And I completely agree with the idea that actually during difficult times, having a nice place to go, having a town centre which is attractive, all of those sorts of things kind of add to the town, increase footfall in the town, make the town a nicer place to be. So given that the costs are nowhere near as outlandish as we originally thought they were, and given it is already budgeted for, and I'm quite sure I agree with kind of playing shop around internal recharges, I don't think that leads you anywhere really. You know, if there are other things for people to do, that's another matter, but for me this feels like a decent investment for me, so I'll be supporting it.
And Anita, finally, thank you.
Thank you. I must say I have listened to the majority. We've had this conversation many times before, and there was a time when I felt the majority of people were quite anti the idea, but mainly because of the costs that we were presented with. So I have to say my heart is singing to hear the fact that we might be contemplating turning it back on. I think the idea of choosing an option, which means that we don't necessarily have it running all year, which, as you say, causes issues anyway around the risk of it icing over and causing an issue on the ground. I think it is worth remembering that we've been talking recently about setting budgets and things like this. We have to remember that anything we put into our budget, if it's not already allowed for, we would have to contemplate what else might disappear in that process. Not yet. Do we actually have this in the budget at the moment? Are we actually contemplating this? Because I wasn't sure that was the case.
The draft budget that no councillors have seen yet is coming under slightly under 5% increase, excluding this 15,000, but 15,000 as opposed to 12,000. So we could wear it next year if that's the kind of question you're asking for.
Okay. And I have to agree. I think, to keep, when I first came to Frome nearly 50 years ago, the fountain was running. And it felt like a wonderful thing to see. And there aren't many fountains around now. And I think to bring it back into that state of life, particularly now that we've got the benches and the planters there, for people to sit and watch water is a really good thing for well-being. And I think that's another thing that we can do to help the town. So I'd be very much in favour.
Thank you everyone for your thoughts. I'm going to break this into two questions. So how I'm going to do this is to vote either for mothballing or for maintaining, and then we'll come on to the two different maintaining options. So first of all those in favour of maintaining the fountain.
Keep these up because it won't be a majority. Sorry. Keep your hands up while I just count. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12. That's a majority.
Okay, good.
And
Step one.
Mark is voting against.
Voting against that, Mark. Okay, noted.
Sorry, Nick, I missed you.
Nick voting against.
So Nick and Mark voting against.
And
doesn't get a vote because she's online.
Okay, so we have voted to maintain the fountain. Within that, we now need to choose between the two options of maintaining it on a year-round basis or maintaining it from March to October. So we'll take the first option, maintaining it for the year.
Too late to make a comment.
Go on, sure.
I mean, it'd be easy to say, oh, let's keep it going with the potential risk that a pump is slightly damaged. But £5,000 is still £5,000. And at the moment, we're getting requests for like £2,000 to keep a warm space going over winter. And, we could get more requests. So this winter, personally, I think we need that £5,000. So we can offer it to community groups that need it. Definitely, I've been swayed as well. I was all for waste of money. This is not what we should be focusing on at the moment, but I have been swayed, and also with the correct figures. But now £5,000 is still £5,000.
Noted. Lisa?
I'm just wondering if we can formally explore income opportunities in that space to help bring those costs down and mitigate against the outlay. So something like 50% of the cost covered by leasing out the space to traders would certainly help.
Cool.
We can explore that, but we can't guarantee it. So we'd have to underwrite it.
Fiona?
Sorry, Lisa, I'm just not quite sure. I think it's really important that we have spaces that are for citizens and not just for consumers. So I really like the idea of this being a fully, I don't like the idea of suddenly it being about sponsorship and about consumerism again. I mean, obviously there'll be traders and stuff there, but I don't like the idea of there being some form of advertising. It just feels like we need spaces where people can be citizens, not having to buy stuff.
You want to come back on that quickly, Lisa?
Yeah, really quickly. I'm looking at the income that traders might get from setting up a stall and trading.
Not sponsorship.
Not like a big sign.
Great big
around-
yes,
okay,
big
okay,
banner.
okay.
No.
Panic over.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to take a vote on the two different options. So we'll take the first option of all year round maintenance. Everyone in favour of all year round maintenance?
Can I just ask a question?
Yes, Anita.
If we commit to this, are we talking forever or? No. What I'm saying is, can we say it's more money we'll keep it running for the year or?
I assume we can review.
I was just asking whether or not we are, can we, if we change from one to the other, is that feasible? Can we make decisions year on year? This isn't going to commit us forever, is it? Whatever we decide.
I propose in 50 years' time we review the decision. Of course, we can review it every year. We can review it on a weekly basis if circumstances change.
Nothing set in stone. So I'm gathering by the response to the last question about all year round maintenance. Everyone in favour of March to October maintenance of the fountain? That looks like a majority to me.
That's a majority in favour of. Okay, so that is a majority in favour of 8 months working in a year at the moment. And
to be reviewed if circumstances change.
To be reviewed, well, yes.
Thank you, everybody. Andy, you've just got your hand stuck up. Oh.
Can't hear you.
Hi, just a quick comment. I really liked your idea about making a thing of turning it on every year. I think we can do something really cool with that. Put it in the notes, please, in the minutes. Thank you.
Noted. Thank you very much, Andy. Any more thoughts or observations on that? Just to confirm that we've agreed, a majority have voted in favour of keeping the fountain, maintaining the fountain for 8 months of the year.
And
marvellous.
Nick voted against.
Nick voted. It was just Nick.
Yeah, I love the fountain. It'd be fantastic if it's running. I just find I know.
Colour.
Sorry, I'll start again. Personally, I love the fountain. I think it's a beautiful thing. I just know, feeling locally, the people I've spoken to, the cost of it is prohibitive. So I'll be pleased it's happened, and I will defend the decision because it's a democratic decision, but I'll abstain from a decision on the next time.
The only reason I was asked, just to clarify, our standing orders indicate we need to record who voted against. That was the only reason I was asking.
Okay, everyone happy?
Yeah. So Laura's just reminded me, no one proposed or seconded those. So I think Sarah was proposing.
Yeah, I proposed that.
Can we just have a second? Anita seconded.
Anita.
Thank you, Laura.
And that, I believe, leads us on to the last item on the agenda, which I think is going to be a relatively quick one. This is approving the grants advisory panel. So the proposed membership, as you see there, Fiona, Philip, Carla, Mark, and Andy and Lisa. Fiona, did you have something you wanted to say? Yes.
Okay. I will say I actually said I didn't have time, and I did actually say that.
Okay, that's fine.
But can I nominate another councillor?
Sure.
Can I nominate?
They know about it.
They do know about it. I've spoken to them. They're very happy about it. I want to nominate Andy Wintmore. I think he'd be absolutely fantastic. He would be. He'd be a really fresh.
That's
A
brilliant.
vital
Andy Wintmore
perspective.
replaces Fiona Barrows. Steve.
I thought I was on this. I was on the paper earlier on.
Steve's on there. Oh, he's just not on there.
Oh,
I said I wanted to.
This is going well so far.
I said I wanted to be on it. Put it that way. If you don't want me on it, fair enough.
You're not on the list in the minutes. You're just not on the list on the slide for some reason.
Okay. Laura, do you just want to read out the proposed names of the people on this panel now? Just this altered slide.
Philip Campagna, Carla Colnett, Mark Dorrington, Anne Hills, Andy Jones, Lisa Merriweather, Andy Wintmore, and Steve Tanner.
And Mark was coming off it.
Mark's not on it.
You said you were. Well, there's no limit. A panel does not have to consist of a certain number of councillors. So there is no minimum and there is no maximum. So it's your choice.
Okay.
Minus Mark Dorrington.
Okay.
Okay, so can I have a proposer to accept those people as the grants advisory panel? Fiona, seconded by Carla. Yeah, everyone in agreement? Yes, great.
That's unanimous.
Excellent. And there's a recommendation for this one as well, isn't there?
Yeah, that's what we've just done.
Oh, that's so fine. Okay, I do believe that concludes this evening's business at 2 minutes off of 9 p.m. Just about perfect. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Brilliant. See ya. Bye.
Bye.